Detroit, the city of cars, sports, and dazzling nightlife, was also where Latrice Morris Dorsey found happiness in the arms of Earl Maxwell. For 4 years, their bond seemed unbreakable, with Maxwell even tattooing Latrice's name on his arm as a permanent vow of love. But behind the perfect facade, Maxwell's jealousy and controlling nature slowly surfaced. Pushed to her limit, Latrice was forced to leave with her 3 children, determined to cut off all contact. Her departure ignited a rage in Maxwell. Then, on Father's Day, 2017, Maxwell appeared at Latrice's doorstep, smiling as he greeted her 4-year-old daughter, before unleashing 10 bullets into the woman he once called the love of his life. What turned a promise etched in ink into a cold-blooded obsession? And why? Despite her efforts to escape, could Latrice not avoid this tragedy? Detroit, Michigan, a city renowned for its automotive industry, professional sports teams, vibrant nightlife, and thriving arts and theater scene. Amid this backdrop, Latrice Morris Dorsey, 42, shone brightly. She was a talented physical therapist working at one of Detroit's most reputable clinics every day. She helped patients recover from injuries, from car accident victims to athletes sidelined by competition. Her gentle hands and warm encouragement restored health and hope to hundreds. Family and friends described Latrice as an extraordinary woman. Beyond excelling in her career, she was a devoted mother to her 3 children. Her life revolved around raising them and building a bright future. She encouraged her children to study hard, pursue their dreams, and become contributing members of society. But behind her strong and smiling exterior, Latrice's romantic past had been a roller coaster. She had once been married to Paul Dorsey, a marriage that gave her beloved children but ultimately could not be sustained. After the divorce, she focused on being a single mother and advancing her career. Those years taught her to balance the demands of motherhood with a high-energy job. Then, Earl Maxwell entered her life, a 38-year-old man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a radiant smile. Their 4-year relationship began like a romantic fairy tale. Maxwell seemed utterly devoted to Latrice, even tattooing her name on his left arm as a profound gesture of commitment and love. In the early days, they appeared to be the perfect couple. Maxwell was attentive, supporting Latrice through tough times and sharing joyful moments. But no one could have foreseen that beneath this serene and beautiful surface, a horrific tragedy was quietly brewing as time passed. The romantic veneer of Latrice and Maxwell's relationship began to crack, revealing darker aspects that had previously gone unnoticed. The first signs of change appeared subtly but ominously. Maxwell started displaying controlling and possessive behaviors that Latrice initially mistook for excessive care from a loving partner. He began questioning her daily schedule in intrusive detail. Queries about who she worked with, why she was late, or where she went on weekends evolved into lengthy, tense interrogations. Maxwell demanded that Latrice report every activity, from shopping trips to meetings with friends. His jealousy extended beyond potential romantic rivals to her professional and platonic relationships. Arguments became more frequent. Maxwell grew angry when Latrice couldn't prioritize him, especially when her children took precedence. He often complained that she no longer loved him as before and accused her of putting other things first. These accusations hurt and confused Latrice, who tried to balance her roles as a partner and a mother. The situation worsened as Maxwell began interfering with how Latrice raised her children. He frequently criticized her parenting, claiming she was too lenient and not strict enough. These opinions not only wounded Latrice, but also created tension in the family, making her children uncomfortable in Maxwell's presence. A turning point came when Latrice realized she was in a toxic relationship. She recognized that Maxwell's care was actually a need for control, and his love had morphed into a possessive obsession. Their arguments grew more intense, with Maxwell resorting to insults and threats when he felt Latrice wasn't complying with his wishes. With her wisdom and life experience, Latrice understood that this relationship no longer brought happiness to her or her children. After many sleepless nights and consultations with close friends, she made the difficult but necessary decision to end her 4-year relationship with Maxwell. This decision wasn't impulsive, but the result of careful deliberation. Latrice knew she couldn't continue in a toxic environment that threatened her personal freedom and her family's happiness. She understood her children needed a stable, positive setting to thrive, which her current relationship couldn't provide. To ensure safety and start anew, Latrice moved with her 3 children to a new home. The move to Avon Avenue was not just a change of address, but a symbol of freedom and a fresh beginning. The new house became the place where she hoped to rebuild a peaceful life for her family, recognizing the importance of completely severing ties with Maxwell. Latrice took drastic measures. She blocked his phone number, unfriended him on all social media, and informed her family and friends of her decision. She also altered daily routines to avoid chance encounters. However, her actions ignited uncontrollable anger and frustration in Maxwell. He couldn't accept that the woman he loved, whose name was tattooed on his arm, had rejected him so decisively. This rejection wounded his pride and made him feel betrayed and abandoned. Unable to contact Latrice directly, Maxwell sought other ways to reach her. He began contacting Paul Dorsey, Latrice's ex-husband, hoping Paul could intervene or relay messages. These calls started as pleas but soon turned into clear, terrifying threats. Paul later told police that Maxwell called him at least 20 times in the weeks before the murder. These weren't casual conversations, but displays of anger and explicit violent intent. Maxwell repeatedly expressed his desire to harm Latrice, using direct and unambiguous threats. The final call, particularly alarming, occurred just 2 weeks before the tragedy. In it, Maxwell no longer hid his intentions, stating plainly that he wouldn't let Latrice escape him. These threats deeply worried Paul, who tried to warn Latrice about the severity of the situation. Paul made multiple attempts to alert Latrice to Maxwell's threats, though their relationship had ended. He felt responsible for protecting the mother of his children. However, Latrice, perhaps wanting to avoid drama and focus on her new life, didn't fully grasp the danger of these threats. Meanwhile, Maxwell grew increasingly unstable and unpredictable. Latrice's rejection turned his love into a dangerous obsession. The tattoo of her name on his left arm, once a symbol of love, now served as a constant reminder of the rejection and betrayal he felt. Their conflict was no longer a typical romantic dispute, but had escalated into a dangerous situation with unpredictable consequences. In the final weeks before the tragedy, Maxwell seemed to make a final decision. He stopped trying to persuade or beg Latrice to return and instead prepared for the worst. His threats were no longer empty words, but a concrete plan. Despite Latrice's efforts to distance herself from the drama, she couldn't escape the dark shadow of her past slowly enveloping her new life. Father's Day. 2017 was meant to be a joyful, warm family day for Latrice Morris Dorsey. She had planned to visit her sister Megan Morris's home to celebrate and enjoy precious moments with loved ones. It was a rare occasion for her to set aside work worries and focus entirely on family. Around 8 p.m., in the small house on Avon Avenue, Latrice was preparing for the special evening. She had just finished getting ready and was about to take her children to her sister's. The atmosphere in the house was relaxed and warm, filled with the laughter and chatter of her children, creating a happy family vibe. 4-year-old Jada was playing in the living room with the innocence typical of a young child, while 14-year-old Justin was engrossed in an Xbox game in his room, wearing headphones to avoid disturbing others. No one in the family could have suspected that Maxwell was quietly approaching the house. Over the past weeks, he had been watching Latrice's routines, learning her habits and the time she was likely at home. His arrival wasn't a spontaneous visit, but the result of a premeditated plan. When Maxwell entered the house, his first act was to greet Jada casually, as if nothing unusual was about to happen. This act revealed his chilling calculation. He could maintain a calm facade, even while intending to commit a brutal act. Jada, in her childish innocence, may have returned his greeting as usual, unaware of the imminent danger. What followed unfolded with shocking speed and brutality, without warning, argument, or dialogue. Maxwell drew a gun and began firing at Latrice. The sound of gunshots echoed through the small house, creating a horrifying scene no one could have prepared for. Maxwell shot Latrice a total of 10 times, with bullets striking her head, arms, and other parts of her body. Each shot was not just an act of violence, but an expression of accumulated rage and hatred erupting uncontrollably. The number of shots indicated this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act, but a deliberate, vicious attack. After committing the brutal act, Maxwell didn't hesitate, but quickly fled the scene. He left behind a tragic and heart-wrenching aftermath. His ability to carry out the act and then escape calmly underscored the cold, calculated nature of his actions. During the tragedy, Justin, engrossed in his Xbox game with headphones on, couldn't hear the gunshots. This may have been a small mercy, sparing him from witnessing the horrific scene directly. However, this reprieve was short-lived. Jada, with the innocence and instinct of a child in danger, ran to her brother to report the terrible event. At just 4 years old, she had witnessed a scene even adults would struggle to process. The image of her mother being shot would become a traumatic memory she'd carry for life. When Justin received Jada's news and removed his headphones, he rushed to the living room and faced an unforgettable scene. Latrice, the loving mother he respected and admired, lay dying. Despite being only 14, Justin displayed remarkable courage and composure in the horrific circumstances. He attempted first aid, possibly using skills learned at school or through educational programs, while shouting for help in hopes someone would hear and assist. Latrice's final moments were spent in her son's arms, as he desperately tried to save her. Despite Justin's valiant efforts, Latrice couldn't survive her severe injuries. She died at the scene, in the arms of her 14-year-old son, in the home she had hoped would mark a safe, happy new beginning. Upon receiving the emergency call from the Avon Avenue house, the Detroit Police Department dispatched its homicide investigation team to the scene as quickly as possible. When detectives and forensic personnel arrived, they faced a heartbreaking sight. A 42-year-old woman dead in the home, she had hoped would be a safe new start. The crime scene was secured and meticulously examined. Forensic experts confirmed that Latrice died from gunshot wounds, with a total of 10 bullets in her body. The sheer number of shots immediately told detectives this wasn't a robbery gone wrong or an accident, but a deliberate, brutal attack. Evidence collection was systematic. Detectives documented every detail, from the victim's position to the angles of the shots and any traces that could identify the perpetrator's actions. There were no signs of forced entry or theft, reinforcing the theory that the killer knew the victim and had a specific motive. Witness interviews began immediately. Justin, though in shock and grief, tried to cooperate with the police. He recounted what he knew about the moments before discovering his mother's condition and his desperate attempts at first aid. However, due to his headphones and gaming, he couldn't provide details about who entered the house or the gunshots. 4-year-old Jada became the case's most crucial witness. Taking a statement from such a young child required care and sensitivity from the detectives. They used specialized techniques to gather information without causing further psychological harm. Jada's simple, direct account provided the investigation's most vital clue. Latrice's sister, Megan Morris, arrived at the scene after being notified of the tragedy. In her grief and shock, Megan spoke with her niece to better understand the events. Jada's reaction when questioned revealed critical information. She confirmed that a man had shot her mother. This, combined with knowledge of Latrice's relationship history, helped police quickly narrow their focus. Interviews with Latrice's family and friends explored her personal relationships, particularly those with potential conflicts. Earl Maxwell quickly emerged as the prime suspect. Details of his 4-year relationship with Latrice, her decision to end it, and her efforts to cut off contact painted a clear picture of a possible motive. Moreover, Maxwell's physical description was detailed: 5'8" tall, large build, gold teeth, and, notably, a tattoo of Latrice's name on his left arm. The investigation uncovered further critical details about Maxwell's mental state in the preceding weeks. Latrice's family and friends confirmed he couldn't accept her decision to end the relationship. They described him as unable to let go and increasingly aggressive when he didn't get his way. A significant breakthrough came from confirming the threats Maxwell made to Paul Dorsey. When detectives contacted Latrice's ex-husband, Paul provided valuable information about the threatening calls he received from Maxwell in the weeks before the murder. Paul stated that Maxwell called him at least 20 times, explicitly threatening to harm Latrice. These calls weren't idle threats, but expressed clear, specific intent. The final call, 2 weeks before the murder, showed Maxwell had planned and was determined to act on his threats. This established a clear motive and proved the act wasn't impulsive, but the result of accumulated hatred and planning. Detectives also learned of Paul's attempts to warn Latrice. Though she seemingly underestimated the danger, the investigation received support from the local community. A neighbor, Ron Wilson, attempted CPR on Latrice upon discovering the incident. Though his efforts couldn't save her, he also provided observations about the area at the time of the crime. A nationwide manhunt was issued for Earl Maxwell, with specific identifying features and warnings that he might be armed and dangerous. His image was widely distributed in the community and media to increase the chances of apprehension. The investigation also focused on the weapon used. Ballistics experts analyzed bullets from the scene, to determine the gun type and potentially trace its origin. This evidence would be crucial in prosecuting Maxwell once apprehended. The entire investigation was conducted with professionalism and precision to ensure justice for Latrice Morris Dorsey and her family. Every clue and piece of evidence was carefully documented and analyzed to build a robust case against the perpetrator. After days on the run, Earl Maxwell made the surprising decision to turn himself in to the Detroit Police Department on June 20, 2017. His surrender might have stemmed from various reasons, perhaps realizing he couldn't evade capture forever, psychological pressure from the nationwide manhunt, or a desire to face the consequences of his actions. Upon surrendering, Maxwell was charged with 2 serious counts: first-degree murder and weapons violations. First-degree murder, the most severe charge in the legal system, required proving premeditation, that the act was planned and intentional. If convicted, Maxwell faced a mandatory life sentence without parole. The trial officially began on October 16, 2017, at the Detroit courthouse. It drew significant attention from the local community, not only due to the crime's brutality, but also for highlighting deeper societal issues about domestic violence and the consequences of toxic relationships. Maxwell's defense team developed a strategy focused on denying the first-degree murder charge. They couldn't dispute that Maxwell killed Latrice, given the overwhelming evidence and his surrender. Instead, they challenged the element of premeditation. Their main argument claimed the shooting was a tragic accident, not a planned act. Maxwell, through his attorneys, testified that he went to Latrice's house that evening, not to kill her, but to talk, possibly to persuade her to reconsider ending their relationship. According to Maxwell's testimony, while trying to embrace Latrice in a gesture of affection or pleading, the gun he carried accidentally discharged, striking her. The defense argued this was an unfortunate accident resulting from a heated argument and emotional turmoil, not a deliberate killing. This strategy aimed to reduce the charge from first-degree murder to a lesser offense like manslaughter or second-degree murder, which would carry a significantly lighter sentence. The defense portrayed Maxwell as an emotionally unstable man who made a terrible mistake but didn't intend to kill. However, the prosecution was well prepared to dismantle this defense. They deemed the accidental shooting claim absurd and inconsistent with the evidence. The prosecution built a strong case using multiple pieces of evidence. The most critical point was the number of shots. They emphasized that Latrice was shot 10 times, not once. The prosecution convincingly argued that a gun couldn't accidentally fire 10 times in succession. Each trigger pull required a conscious, intentional act. The number of shots demonstrated extreme anger, a calculated action, and completely debunked the accident theory. The second key evidence was Paul Dorsey's testimony about the threatening calls. Dorsey testified about Maxwell's multiple calls in the weeks before the murder, explicitly threatening to kill Latrice. The final call, 2 weeks prior, provided undeniable evidence of premeditation. The prosecution explained that premeditation didn't require a months-long elaborate plan. It could form in minutes or hours before the act. Maxwell's repeated threats, combined with bringing a gun to Latrice's home, showed he had intent and was mentally prepared for violence. The third point emphasized the crime's particularly cruel nature. Maxwell didn't just kill Latrice, but did so in front of her 4-year-old daughter. The prosecution argued that committing such a violent act in a child's presence demonstrated a level of brutality and inhumanity incompatible with an accident. A person in a normal state of mind, even in anger, wouldn't act this way in front of a child unless fully intent on killing. The prosecution also highlighted Maxwell's behavior post-crime. His immediate flight from the scene showed he was fully aware of his actions and understood they were criminal. If it were truly an accident, a natural response would have been to call for help, assist the victim, or stay to explain the situation. Throughout the trial, witnesses provided context about Maxwell and Latrice's relationship. Her family and friends described Maxwell's increasing control and jealousy in the relationship's final months, and Latrice's difficult decision to end it to protect herself and her children. The court also heard from forensic experts about the wound's nature, shooting angles, and distance, all supporting the argument that this was a deliberate attack, not an accident. Ballistics experts explained the necessity of multiple trigger pulls for 10 shots, fully debunking the accident claim, faced with overwhelming evidence and the prosecution's persuasiveness. Maxwell and his legal team shifted tactics. To avoid the mandatory life sentence tied to first-degree murder, Maxwell agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder. This plea meant he admitted his act was intentional, but not meticulously planned. The sentence for this charge ranged from 25 to 50 years. A severe penalty, but one allowing the possibility of parole after a certain period. The court accepted the plea and sentenced Maxwell to 25 to 50 years in prison. The sentence reflected the crime's severity and sent a strong message that domestic violence and murder would be harshly punished. Though Maxwell avoided a life sentence, he would likely spend most, if not all, of his remaining life behind bars. 4 years after his mother's death, Justin, Latrice's 14-year-old son at the time of the crime, graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and earned a football scholarship to college. Justin shared that he wanted to make his mother proud by achieving what she couldn't due to her tragic death. He said, "I know I have to work hard to achieve what I want, which is to attend college with a scholarship, to play my favorite sport, and study the field my mother always wanted." Latrice Morris. Dorsey's death serves as a reminder of the importance of protecting survivors of domestic abuse. Her story hopes to inspire and promote justice while raising awareness about safeguarding those threatened by domestic violence. Our deepest condolences go to Latrice Morris Dorsey's family and friends. May her memory be a blessing to her family and loved ones,